Hi guys, I'm making this video to talk a little bit about Brave New World, which is what you guys are reading right now. Um, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I just want to briefly go over what you've read so far, the first six chapters, um, to hopefully clear up any confusion if there is any. And then if you guys have any questions about anything more specific, please feel free to ask me and I can talk about that with you. But as you can tell, the book opens with a group of students going on tour at what is called a hatchery, and this is where um, people are made essentially in petri dishes. So, as you go through, we learn that people are conditioned to be a certain way, look a certain way, and act a certain way. Like I said, through conditioning. Uh, through conditioning and through their growth process when they're being created. So, like in their petri dish, different things are added to them to be a certain way, look a certain way, act a certain way, so they fit into this case system. They are conditioned basically to be happy where they are. So, they think, oh, I'm really glad I'm not a gamma. I'm glad I'm not a beta, blah, blah, blah. So they're conditioned to be this way and to be happy with who they are. And these students are learning about this process. So it's a lot of discovering what this world is like that they live in. We learn through this tour and through some conversations between characters that life as we know it doesn't really exist anymore. So it did in the past, but it does not anymore. So things like family and monogamy, marriage, those things that we value in the society, to them, that's like, it's uncomfortable to talk about. Whereas things that we may be more uncomfortable talking about, like promiscuity and things like that, those are the types of things that they are comfortable with. It's almost like those things replaced what we know. And even though they are so heavily controlled by the government, they look to these things like promiscuity and soma, the drug that they take to essentially wipe away their emotions. Those are the things that they find pleasure in and that make them happy. So even though they're controlled, it's like, the government makes up for it by giving them these things or allowing them to do these things. So this is what is seen as normal. We even see children participating in really weird things like playing together naked. Things that, like, now, and they do mention this in the story, would be like totally bizarre and something that would have to be reported. Like, it's not normal. But in Brave New World, it is normal. So we learn about this world that they live in towards where we stopped reading, chapter 6. We also are introduced more specifically to some of the characters, like Lenina and Bernard. So when we're first introduced to Lenina, it does seem like she could be a bit of a rebel because of her thoughts on relationships. Like, she talks to her friend Fanny about being in or seeing her friend, this boy, Henry, for 4 months, she says, which to her friend is weird. They don't really do relationships, they just kind of go from one person to the next. So it comes off as though she is a rebel at first. At least she has some rebellious thoughts. We are also introduced to Bernard, and he is definitely a rebel. He does not really fit in with this society. Uh, he and Lenina get together, and that's kind of where we see more of a difference between them. Where Bernard expresses that uh, he wants to feel different. He doesn't want to feel controlled. He wants to feel more independent. When he expresses these types of thoughts to Lenina, she thinks that he's like totally crazy. And she says, "Oh, just take some soma and you'll feel better." That's like her way of fixing things. Um, and then we also have Helmholtz, who is also kind of a rebel in his thoughts because he doesn't feel satisfaction. But he's kind of opposite of Bernard in the sense that he is built very well. He's super smart. He has a lot of women, which is a good thing for him in this society. Um, but he still doesn't feel satisfied. Whereas Bernard, he is small in stature, which is unusual for his case, um, and has, a hard time getting together with women, not only because they find him unattractive, but also because he has just a hard time accepting this type of society. So, anyway, Bernard and Lenina are like kind of together. They're dating, at least. They're doing different things together, but they decide to go to a uh, reservation that has savages on it. When this reservation is described, it's kind of um, like life normally would be. So they still have marriage, children are still born, and that's like something else that they don't talk about is children being born, having mothers and fathers and families. All of these things exist there. Christianity exists because we know that doesn't exist in the society of Brave New World. They cut off all the tops of the crosses and it's a T. So they worship Ford. They say Ford instead of God or Lord, and things like that. So, um, Bernard, now this is where we stop chapter 6. Bernard is probably going to this reservation because he's seeking something different. Lenina, she, I think, just wants to observe what's happening, what life was like, but she's not as interested, or she has different reasons than Bernard does. Also, in chapter 6, we find out that Bernard might be exiled to Iceland because the director knows that he is rebellious in his thoughts, at least. And we can surmise that he picks this up through other people observing him, and, the government is probably also listening in to whatever his conversations are. This is pretty similar to 1984 with the dystopian society, although I do think that in Brave New World, there is more positive replacement with government control, which is obviously looked at as a negative thing. But those are the basics with what we've read so far. It's kind of an introduction to the society as a whole, but also to some of our major characters like Bernard and Lenina. So, please, again, if you guys have any questions at all, don't hesitate to ask me. But other than that, I hope you have a great day, and I'll talk to y'all later.